I'm Jason,
I'm Jeff.
and this is Real World AI. Today, in this episode, we're going to be going over headlines from late June of 2026. So, this article is why AI hasn't replaced software engineers and won't.
I love it.
There's great anxiety and uncertainty about AI replacing jobs. How can we move past vague warnings and bombastic predictions? Bring data to bear the question. One good way is to look at the profession where AI capabilities are furthest along and adoption has been exceptionally rapid: software engineering. True. Software engineering has become sort of the breaking, the sort of bleeding edge of AI for a lot of obvious reasons. And a lot of other industries, like, I feel like, are following along and like taking note of that of software engineering. Is like there's a lot tech I feel like tech headlines in general are getting a lot more attention because of that, actually.
Yeah,
Side note there.
there's a lot of concern. I'm seeing it in my workplace. People
Mhm,
worried about like AI is going to replace their job, and that might be true. That AI may take the exact job that they're doing right now, but
mhm.
it's going to need humans to show it how and
Yeah,
quality check and do kind of the deeper thinking that they still and probably will never get to that are going to require humans. So there is
yeah.
validity in worrying about the job that you're doing today because that's probably going to change.
It's
But
gonna change. I actually I don't think I've ever had a moment. I've had moments where I'm like, "Wow, this is really powerful." But, like, I don't think I've ever had a moment where I've seriously thought, like, "Wow, my job is in trouble, like, this can do my job." I don't know, have you?
there's pieces of my job that I I think need to be done by AI because it'll do it way
Yeah.
faster and better.
That's an interesting point. Like, I was actually just working literally today earlier on something that I like, and this is an exercise I go through a lot when I'm trying to create a new skill or do something with AI. Is I try to, the best way is to do it yourself manually. The more you do it manually, the more you know the task, and so you know exactly how you want it to be done, and you can do it. And if it's a new task, sometimes I think I'm a little too fast, or I've noticed I'm a little too fast to just jump in and like be like, "Hey, I want it this way" or whatever. But I haven't actually done it ever manually, like ever. And so sometimes when I'm like get lost and I just am like in this like rut of it's the skill or whatever, I'm like the job I'm having it do, it just is outputting, and I'm like, "No, I don't like this. I don't like this." It's probably because I'm just kind of taking shots in the dark and not doing it manually myself. Um,
I mean, that's the definition of vibe coding to me. That is,
yeah.
I don't know how to do this myself. So AI, I want you to do this for me. And
Mhm.
on little things or like as you first get started, it looks amazing. You're like, "Oh my gosh, I gave you this little prompt and
Yeah,
out comes this stuff that like looks good and is
right.
functional." And but then if you expand on that and you continue to iterate that way, eventually it's going to be like a problem. It's not going to go
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and especially our, attitude towards AI generated writing at my current company, I actually have come to really like a lot, which is just, and I think this is an attitude a lot of people have too, is if the way my boss puts it, if you're not willing to put in the time to write something well, I'm not going to read it. So, and I've actually, another thing I've done just personally to sort of act as like a just like signal that I wrote something is I've stopped uppercasing anything because AI always uppercases and it has like perfect like punctuation and sentence case and stuff. So just in all of my Slacks in my company and in like all my communications, my PRs, comments or descriptions or anything, I always use lowercase, and it's an intentional decision for me of a signal that even subliminally to my coworkers and to anybody of like this is me, and then when it's perfect, like, sentence case, they know it's immediately
Interesting.
AI.
Interesting.
And so it's just like that's actually something I've done for quite a while now as just like a small thing that I've intentionally decided to do to indicate and to also not like to also force myself to actually write, so that If I am going to try to go through the trouble of, like, lowercasing all the things to make it look like myself, that's a lot of work, and so then at that point, I may as well just write it myself. Even if it's just, like, kind of like copying it over, it forces me to give full like, my full backing of this is my writing type of thing.
Uh, okay, so I do have a question on this topic about this article. So that one of the things that occurs to me is we now have a generation of developers that are going to be graduating college or maybe even skipping college and going straight into a development career,
Yeah.
and they're coming through with this possibility of having AI be a massive part of their own development, like as they're starting it.
Yeah.
So how are they going to get exposed to being able to do this themselves and write it themselves when not only is it easier for them to just prompt AI to do it, it's also probably going to do it faster and in some cases better than a brand new developer going to build code. So
Mm.
I'm worried about that. So, it's one thing to have seasoned engineers be able to be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
look, this is a tool where I can now go like make myself way more productive." But if they had to, if the tool wasn't there, they could go write the code. They know how to do it. And they would do it
Mhm.
well. It would just take a lot longer. But
Mhm.
with more junior, inexperienced engineers, how are they going to develop that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been thinking a lot about I think I have some discombobulated thoughts that I've been forming even over the last week. So to share a little bit of those thoughts, I've been thinking a lot about I have started at a company like I'm like 2.5 months in now. And so there's obviously that learning curve of like onboarding and I'm like I feel fully ramped up now, like
Sure.
100%. I don't know everything about our code base or application, but I know everything that I feel like I need to know now to figure things out and do it. And I know enough about our code style and like conventions and stuff that my pull requests now, like at the beginning, as any junior or really just any even an experienced engineer, when they first come on team,
Exactly.
there's going
Yep.
to be different styles and conventions, and
Yep.
there's going to be a lot of comments on those first PRs. And then as first of all, confidence builds in the other engineers of your code that you understand what you're doing. And then also just as your code is more correct, there's less and less. And so I'm at that stage now where it's like I have like probably a 95%, like sort of passing like 95% of the code I'm writing is like good with no comments now. So I feel like really good about that. And as I've been reflecting on that learning period, a lot of those things that I've learned, like I'm realizing that those feedback loops I'm learning for myself. Sometimes I'm passing that on to like my AI and stuff and like my agents to help me. And I actually have some work that I want to do there. I've just been throwing all of my rules into like the same file right now. And I'm not even actually connected to my agent. I've just been storing them because I know I want to format it and put it into a better skill, which I want to do. But so I've been throwing those things in there, and I think those are things. But it has made me ask the question, like, what is the difference between them? Whenever they leave a comment on the PR, it helps me learn. But like, it's almost made me question, like, what value am I adding where if they're commenting, like, instead of putting a comment on my PR, would it be more valuable to just teach the AI that I'm using to do that thing and not even go have me? And then at that point, like, if you kinda go down that train, it's like, well, then what's even the point of me at
Exactly,
all?
which is what this article is saying, right? Or
Yeah.
alluding to, like, yeah, if your boss could get AI tuned with the right
Yeah.
skills, the right scaffolding and everything so that it wrote code just like he does, now he could just spawn agents out and really it's only his like, "These are the features I worry about and what I need to have happen." And so now that's the
Yes.
value add is him
Yes.
organizing everything into the larger picture
Yes.
and using agents to fill in the details.
And that's a big question, and that's where so my rebuttal to that and yeah, we'll walk through this article
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
I remember liking this article. I read it several days back, so I can't remember the main points in it, but we'll go through it. But I remember it was good. And but something I've come to as I've gone through this reflection, again, just being like, all right, well, if my ramping up experience has been I slowly push code and I'm kind of learning things, and then they are basically adding rules and skills to me, to
Right.
my head, and then
Right.
I'm improving and I'm learning those style conventions and stuff, and then I'm improving and now I'm like ramped up. Like, why could they? So in rebuttal to that question of like, what's like, why would I add any value? I think the place I've add value is in the critical thinking because basically, I think what we're looking at, I think one way to visualize it is like there's like three different things here. There is the research of something and like learning about the context of something. That does AI does that way better than humans do. I feel more confident. Like one task I'm working on at work right now is moving some of our queries over to our Read-replica so that some of those production rights can come down and we
Sure.
can just offload our load. And the research, like, so the question we have to ask for each query is like, is this load bearing in a way that we can't move it? We should not move it to the read repo. Is there something do we have um, read after writes or similar things like that that are going to cause problems if we move this to a read repo that's lagging slightly behind the
Right.
main
Right.
one, right? Or like whatever. And so that's one of the tasks I've been working on, and I was trying to go through and manually do it so that I could instruct AI on how to do it, and then hopefully it can crank out, like, a bunch more of these queries and, like, analyze them for me because it's a huge research task. Really, the only code change is changing we already have the read replica, like, context, like, all the code set up for it. It's literally a four-character change to switch this query over, right?
Right.
Changing it from this to they use this module to this module. And so the code change is like nothing. So basically an entirely research task. And I have realized that I have like way more confidence because I was like, I'll do one of these queries on my own and then I'll have an agent. I'll know what to do and I have an agent do it. But as I was going through on my own, I like started realizing, first of all, I don't know all of the red flags. And this is partly because I'm a junior and I don't know. Like I didn't really know. I was like, okay, what are the things that I should look out for? So I didn't even know really about like to look for read after writes until I was
Sure.
like talking to AI. And then I was like,
Sure.
oh, that's one of the red flags to look for. So that one of the things is like coming up with those things and then also analyzing. Like I have to step up. Okay, so I have this query, and then there's all the direct callers. And then there's some that have like four layers on top of that, some that end there in the leaves. There's like this huge like kind of tree of things that calls it. And there's no way there's like especially for some queries, there's basically no way for me to keep that all in my head without, like, really taking, like, probably a full day to understand all of the code involved in this query fully. Like, it would literally take me probably an entire day, if not more, to understand all of that, and even then, I'd be like, "Do I really remember everything about the code and know every side effect and everything that's happening to be able to be confident that we can move this over?" So, all that is to illustrate that I think for research, like AI, I feel so much more confident that AI can do that job than me, actually. That's
Sure.
something that I trust AI more to do that job than I trust myself to do that job, actually. And so there's certain manual parts of that that I think are worth doing myself just to see how I like to think about it so AI can tell
But
me
there's
that.
something critical
But
there. You are still going to quality check. You have now done some of the work in the repo to, like, at least understand the complexity of the problem, what you're looking for,
yeah.
all those sorts of things, and now you can define very clearly to AI what to do, which is critical
Mhm.
as well. That took a human being able to kind of figure out what that is. Sure, you could go make a skill now that can recognize this, but you're
Yeah.
starting from nothing and needed to would have to build that. And then even as it's done, you're still gonna go check some stuff. You're still gonna be like, "Does I'm gonna look at a few of these and make sure that it looks right to me." As
Mhm.
if it's a critical business function, I mean, it's why every single chat or AI tool still says AI can make mistakes.
Yeah.
Make sure you check it, and there's still a possibility of hallucination no matter how much you provide in directions. Stuff can go wrong as the model executes, and it can hallucinate things. It could come up in your example with a query that doesn't even exist. It's
It's
possible.
possible. But also, I would argue that humans, especially when you talk about large research or context tasks, humans are going to hallucinate far more than agents are going to.
Yeah, that might be fair.
Especially with agents that we have now that have million context windows and stuff, like, they're really well equipped for these, I mean, I'm not even talking about using that whole context window. When I'm analyzing one query, our repo isn't like that huge. Like
Right.
you could triple the size of our repo and I still would feel very confident. I would feel much, in fact, so I actually think the scaling actually works in favor of agents. So I actually think the argument goes that way. So I wouldn't make the argument that humans are going to be more accurate in a research task, but I think that in terms of like, all right, how, because at the end of the day, a human does have to sign off on it and stuff and like understand. We have to basically, we have this query that's used throughout the repo, and we need a human to ultimately understand how it's being used and pass off the, "Yeah, we feel good about moving this over. We feel like the risk, is low enough that we can move it over or not, and there's this reason why not." And so ultimately, I see it as like almost this extraction problem of how can I take all of this over here and have an agent like translate all of that code into some way for me to be able to digest it into my head and communicate it to other engineers so that they know understand the change I'm making is safe. I think that point takes a lot of critical thinking. So to go back to the three things that I was sort of mentioning, there's research and then there's coding, but I think a lot of people skip over some of the critical thinking. So research, I think, is AI. All this is to say, like, and give an example that research, I actually think is very in favor of AI. I think coding is about even, actually. I think a really experienced coder can do better, even if you and be more efficient. Like, yeah, you could maybe set up an AI to be like perfect style conventions and everything, but that's going to take a lot of time. An experienced coder developer is going to learn those things so much faster than
And
setting up your
use
AI
them
and be more efficient
continuously
and question them
and question
when
them.
they are
Sure,
bad.
push
Like
back.
AI is going to take the patterns that you give it and it's going to follow those perfectly. But what if a pattern has gotten unwieldy? Like what if you
Sure.
defined a pattern in your code base or whatever? Number one, what if you weren't sure about the pattern in the first place? What if it was
Right,
a shortcut? That
right.
happens all the time of like, well, we're just going to do this for now. And you keep that as tribal knowledge in your head of like, this was a shortcut and we'll refactor later or whatever, but then the AI is just going to follow that. So I think there's a lot of reasons why actually coding, sometimes AI can be more consistent in patterns. And so, but sometimes humans are more consistent and they push back. So I would say it's actually about even on the coding side of things. Research, definitely AI. And then critical thinking, that goes a lot with, again, that like pushback. So maybe I guess you could kind of pull that out of coding and put that into the critical thinking. But my point is that's where my value lies as a developer in my company, and I think that's where software developers always their value will remain forever is that critical thinking of
So
like,
why
should we do this right now? How deep do we need to go on this? Is this the right move to actually do? Are we sure we need this feature? Doing pushback like that, I think is really valuable and
that is
stuff like that and
very
thinking
true.
through it and
Yes.
thinking along the way, again, thinking of those things of like, I'm implementing this new feature. AI is always just going to implement it and do it according to your instructions, whether that's you tell it to do as minimal as possible or whatever. But it would be really hard to prompt an AI. I mean, theoretically possible, but I would really question if anyone could get an AI to reliably have a human's type of intuition of when something should just be added versus, okay, this is at the point where you need a refactor. We need to
Absolutely.
change the pattern bigger. That's really, I think, really, really hard. The problem of prompting AI is one of verbalization, and that is such a notoriously difficult thing. That's why it's called intuition itself, is because it's something that's really hard, if not impossible, to teach to somebody. You
Yes.
gotta have that sense. That's what historically has made the best developers, I think. It's not
Agreed.
just speed, it's, you know, the most valuable, the best paid developers are the ones that are critically thinking and always have been and always will be the ones that are weighing cost and expected value of,
So I wanna
do
ask
we
a
need a
question
refactor,
there.
do we need whatever.
You've just joined a company a couple months in,
Yeah.
and there's very small company who was already leveraging AI a lot, right? Was the company already
I would
leveraging it?
say, like, above average,
Okay.
but less than the company I was at previously where
Sure.
they were just full token maxing. So,
Right.
I wouldn't say we're, like, full token maxing, it's, like, a lot more methodical. We're a developer API product, so it's, like, a lot more methodical versus my last company before that was non-technical users that so we could kinda just I don't know. We had a lot more tolerance for bugs, and it was a lot more UI focused and stuff. So this one's a lot more like API is a lot more sticky. If you're gonna put something in there, it's really hard to pull out later. So definitely, I would say above average AI usage, but, like,
So
not to
why
full
they
tokenizing.
decided to add a human to their team. So obviously there was a reason for that instead of just like, well, how can we make AI cover the gaps?
Yeah.
So do you know enough about what went into that decision to like articulate why in that real world scenario of a small team and they had a decision in front of them about bringing on a human or trying to figure out how to have better leverage AI to do it? Like what made that decision to be like, let's go the human route?
Well, again, I think yeah, I mean, I would boil it down to critical thinking. I think that's why you hire humans, especially for developing tasks now. If you're just trying to generate more code, then I don't know. Like, I feel like that's why the hiring market or that's why I feel like though the hiring market is tough right now, it's not the worst. Like, I was able to get a job really quick. I think if you're willing to work hard as a developer and you find the right lane to work in and stuff, and you're really honing your skills. Like I found a job really quickly. I had several offers. I think yeah, I think it's still pretty strong. You can. I think there's still. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there's still a lot of demand for critical thinking, and yeah, it's not just people don't need just crap code out the door or research or whatever.
Right.
Those problems are solved. I think what I'm trying to say is that those make really great headlines, but that's never been the critical resource ever. I think people have always had this idea of like, we just want to move faster, we want to ship more code. The bottleneck hasn't been writing code. The bottleneck has been thinking about code and communicating those things. I think that it's sped up, but I think that there's thousands of articles that you could find online that show especially now, looking back at the past year or 2 of AI, of like, we've sped up, but it's been marginal. It hasn't been this huge AI explosion. I think I think everyone, unless I think everyone except for the, AI token factories themselves, like Claude, like, Anthropic and OpenAI are, who I think are just kind of lying to you. I think everyone else, every other company is going to agree that their growth has or their speed of development has increased, but marginally.
Right.
And I think that's because in order to really increase your speed, you've got to solve the hard problems that require critical thinking. How do we
Right.
make our organization more efficient, you know? How do we not just ship more stuff and then get it all bottlenecked in PR review because we don't understand what's going on anymore and stuff. Like there's deeper system and organizational questions and critical thinking questions. What should our product even do? What is a good feature? Like there's so many hard questions that AI can't solve.
Sure. What kind of is the point of this article then? What is their reason to say like software engineers
Yeah, let me
are
skim
still going to
through
be needed?
this. They say we argue there's enough evidence to reject the narrative that it'll cause even that once it reaches a certain threshold, it will cause mass layoffs. I mean, there have been mass layoffs already, but I think part of that's an excuse, using AI as an excuse
Yes.
or regret.
I could see it being like it makes the decision to lay off a human that is proven they're not very good at this. That makes that decision a lot easier.
Hmm.
When you have a human who is not a very good engineer, it's easy to be like, nah, AI can do what you're doing.
My take is, especially from people I've talked to who are in like Silicon Valley and stuff, is that there's a lot of waste expansion that's pretty just really wasteful intentionally so that in harder periods or whatever or when you need to redirect resources you can contract and it doesn't really hurt your business
Hmm.
and so I think it's more strategic and so I think that it's not a lie that it's for AI, but I think it's like a redirection of resources. It's like, yeah, we like kind of intentionally overhired. And now that we need those resources, and since we overhired, we have certain levels our stakeholders are, our financials and taxes and stuff that are actually in our favor. And so when we can contract, we can spend those resources elsewhere. I think they intentionally want to have a bit of fat on them so that if times are tough, they can cut it and then their financials look great and stuff. I think there's some of that strategy happening, causing layoffs, not like I don't think that there's like a lot of valuable workers that are getting laid off because their jobs were effectively replaced by AI.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I don't think it's reached that yet either. I don't know if it ever
I
will.
mean, even if yeah, like I think it's a lot more for financial reasons. Like when I got laid off recently, it was for financial reasons for the company.
Right, right.
It's not like I had this feeling of like impending doom where I was like, oh no, like they're introducing AI and it's doing my whole job. Like it was never like that. I had more on my plate than ever before, And from my understanding, I think it really hurt all the, all the layoffs they had to do. It was a pain thing. So
Right.
yeah, going back to this, let's see. Classic AI washing, 3 stories. So here's some stories of massive layoffs. 4,000 employees laid off. AI is enabling a new way of working with smaller and flatter teams. That's true too. I think some of it is, again, reallocation more than just cutting, I think, than just trimming. I think a lot of these companies are going to lay off some in some places and then rehire in other places. But it's not like you can just like move those employees over because they have different skill sets and stuff. So it's like we need to drop certain people because we want to hire over here. It's like a more of a reallocation than a trim, I think. So I think there's some of that, like flatter teams or like different teams maybe.
This isn't entirely new to the tech industry. So there was a change in the industry. I worked mostly in finance and worked for banks, and there was a change where we went from everything was mainframe to being a lot more that was following a client server model. And this was way before AI was around. And it was a similar problem. The banks had all these mainframe and developers, and that wasn't how they were going to go forward in solving some of the problems. They still the mainframe stuff is still there today in the big banks, but they started to hire in the areas of the client server development because the technology shifted, and
Mhm.
there were like better solutions for some problems in using that style of coding and building applications rather than on the mainframe. So they did
Mhm.
have to, and they just allowed it through attrition. People move, for their own personal reasons and so on. And in some cases, I know it did come in one of the places I was at where the mainframe developers were given a choice, like, we don't need any more mainframe work done here. Like, we have to maintain a core team, but we don't need so many of you. And if we'll even train you if you want to learn the new technology and the new way of doing things, we will train you. But that's where we need people where we're growing right now, not here. And most of them are like, "Nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to learn the new thing." And so they
Mhm.
opted to leave and go somewhere else where they needed mainframe developers to be able to go and do it. So I don't think that the very concept you just talked about, like, yeah, there's maybe even to the point of layoffs. Now, the bank I
Mhm.
was at didn't do that, but there could have been layoffs. Like, we don't need all of these mainframe developers, and then we're going to hire over here. And
Yep.
yes, reallocation kind of thing. And a similar thing could be happening. It could be like there could be engineers are like, I don't get this AI thing, and I don't want to learn it.
Yeah,
And
and that's the thing is
and
that
that
there's
could
a
be
lag
the
time.
and that could
There's a
be the
lag
choice,
window.
right? That could be
There's
like the
gonna be
company is
years
saying
and
like,
years.
"I'm sorry, but you gotta learn to do this because that's where we're going."
The AI wave is not really a wave. It's the bleeding edge still. I
It is.
mean, it's not like you're not going to you're gonna see AI. You already do see AI chatbots all over. Every single website has an AI chatbot. But what you don't see is, banks on their internal systems just writing with AI, writing all of their code with AI. Like, that's just it's going to be we're gonna be sitting here. I mean, banks are still using what? COBOL for their
On the mainframe.
language? Yeah, and on the mainframe. So, there's a long lag time, even in software and stuff, of adoption, and certain areas that'll never be adopted, because it'll never be trusted or whatever, or maybe adopted to a lower degree. So, it's not really a wave, but there are certain places where it's most applicable. But also, I think I was misreading this. So as I was skimming back through this, the point of these AI washing is actually what I was kind of mentioning before of like using it as an excuse. It's just a total excuse. So in these cases that they said, and later down here they said we didn't cherry pick these examples, and they kind of give some more evidence even after, and we'll get to that. But the point that this article is making in this section is that so much of this is exactly just PR,
Exactly.
is
Yep.
layoffs for other reasons, and because AI is the big hot word right now, it's like, "Oh, it's just AI. It's just AI." And, like, the fintech company called Block, they had 4,000, they laid off a layoff of 4,000, and they cited AI. But then in subsequent reporting cited here, it revealed a radically different picture. After growing headcount more than threefold during the pandemic, which is true. If you look at the graphs of hiring software developers, massive pandemic spike, and then it came down because of like a tons of over hiring during the pandemic. The company was under massive financial pressure, like my own experience getting laid off, massive financial pressure. And it was like, we literally have like no choice. but to
Right.
lay people off. Like, we're dead if we don't, you know? We have to figure out a way to live with less people. So massive financial pressure. Even this, a data scientist on the Cash App team posted that Block shoved AI down everyone's throats, which I've heard from people like Amazon too
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. And I think it's more because of financial pressure. It's like maybe we can like use AI, or I've heard Meta. Like I've heard Meta lately is in a really bad spot, and the employees are kind of revolting and really not in a good spot because they're like tracking everything their employees do, trying to train AIs to do their job and stuff. Nobody likes that and stuff like that. So I think that companies, it's more financial reasons, and it's kind of colder than that. And it's not like it's not natural. It's kind of like this shoving down of AI, like hoping on a prayer that it's going to like solve their financial picture better than humans or something.
Like you said,
Different
it
understanding.
kinda serves as a PR move of sorts where layoffs could be seen as bad when it happens, especially 4,000 people on a staff being getting laid off. But if you
Yeah.
can taint that in your PR release of like,
If you can tell your
because it's
investors, "Oh,
AI,
we have AI. We
and
don't
then
need these
then they're like,
people anymore.
"Oh,
It's because of
that's
AI."
what you should be
Yeah,
doing with it. AI should be
exactly. I think it's
decreasing
a
your job count."
PR, like, investor sort of thing.
Yeah,
Like, here, same thing. So when Snap laid off 1,000 people, which I think Snap is Snapchat, I think, right, and stuff, but anyway,
maybe.
Snap, and, they posted a net loss. So let's see. In reality, the layoffs followed a campaign by an activist investor demanding cost cuts. They had posted a net loss every full year since the 2017 IPO. So, I mean, yeah, at that point, like,
The
you gotta
investor was
figure
just
it out.
tired of it. He's like, "You gotta cut."
And so then they cut 1,000 people and they'd say that it's AI, but
Right, and it
look
could
at this.
be
Tellingly, the nature of the cuts, such as 150 jobs spanning various roles in augmented reality, don't correlate with the cuts we would expect if they were driven from AI.
sure.
So,
But they can
yeah,
claim it in their PR statement too, because it could be the case that they're like, "You need to figure out how to incorporate AI into your job," and those that were like, "Yeah, I can't do that," or "I don't
part
know
of that
how,"
too.
they could have been like, "Okay, then because of AI, not that AI replaced them, but because you can't figure out how to use AI, we're getting rid of you, and we have a head count that we have to meet on how many we're going to get rid of."
Yeah, there's this as well that they cite of 59% of US hiring managers admit that they emphasize AI when explaining hiring freezes or layoffs because it goes better with stakeholders.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
so it's just straight up, it's just PR for a lot of that. So it goes on about this. Another interesting data point. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, just scanning this. So another interesting data point: the WARN Act, which requires certain disclosures of plant closing and mass layoffs affecting over 100 workers. In March 2025, New York became the first U.S. state to add an AI disclosure checkbox to that filing. In the first full year, so since March 2025 to March 2026, that's the AI craze of the last year.
Right.
In the first full year, more than 160 companies filed those notices, not even one checked the AI box.
So the
So
option became available.
when it actually is going to be enforced, like in the government of like, or whatever, of is this actually because of AI? They're like, no. So a lot of it's PR. Layoffs are the wrong signal. Let's see. The research is clear that the effect operates through slower hiring rather than increased separations. Firing existing workers results in the loss of precisely the tacit knowledge and organizational capital that allows workers to operate AI effectively. That's very true. That's true. I think that's a good angle. It's like, actually, I think this is a really interesting angle because really, if you just step out of the PR bubble for a second and you think about like, if AI really was competent enough to start replacing people, like, would we see mass layoffs? And the question is probably not this immediately. You would actually wanna hang on to especially your valuable employees as long as possible because they're the ones that can help train your AI the best.
Exactly. Right, right. Make sure
Then
that
again then again, like I said, if you do, which I do subscribe to the paradigm of, like, a lot of these, especially large corporate companies, are adding fat intentionally adding workers that they know aren't, like, the highest quality, in the first place, then, yeah, those people are gonna you're gonna shred that you're gonna, trim that anyways, so that's true too, but morale, it's expensive in terms of morale. Yeah, I don't think that dissuades the people
yeah,
necessarily though, but
most of the most CEOs don't care about that very much.
well, especially if you're in a financial bind, like, the company dying's a lot worse than morale going down.
Right,
So,
right.
you just gotta deal with it.
There's a lot of CEOs. I've experienced a lot of CEOs over my career, and they all pay a lot of lip service to culture and how important their employees are,
It's
but
about money. I mean, it's
it's
at the end of the
never
day, it's a business.
yeah, it's still a business, and they have to do what's best for the businesses to succeed.
Okay, so let's jump into the next section. Coding agents have elected labor displacement. The decide, execute, deliver sandwich. Okay, this must be what was guiding a lot of my thought. Like I literally think I said this word for word
You pretty much did.
earlier. Writing code isn't and never was the bottom. I'm pretty sure I said that word for word
Yeah,
earlier
yeah.
in the episode, and so that's probably because I read this article and it's still in my head, which is so true. I think. I mean, you can't say it better than that. Developers spend surprisingly little time coding, 9 to 61%.
It's and
Which is a huge gap, but still, yeah, I mean,
and
I think it depends on your level of management or whatever. Like
it
me, I'm
does.
coding a lot of my time,
Sure.
but I'm low level, I'm and we're, fully, like we don't have any GTM, we're all engineers, so we're all just building the product all the time. So in my case, but I think there's a lot of places, like I know even at my last company, are when one of our best engineers moved into a management role, all of a sudden about 60% of his time was spent in meetings.
Right. And I can attest to it from, I've been working as a developer or oversee like helping developers for 30 years now. It's the number one complaint about the developers is I don't get enough time just coding. I
Yeah.
have meetings that I have to go to. I have planning I have to go to. I've worked in highly regulated environments, so there's a lot of regulatory overhead in the environments I've been in that they have to pay
Mhm.
attention to. There's documentation time. There is stuff that they have to do a lot of that they don't like doing. And yeah, that's not going to change. Like AI can't do some of those things. AI is not going to go attend the meeting
Yeah.
where they're doing planning between the different teams and what they're going to
Well,
be
AI can
delivering.
attend the
And
meeting, but it's not going to really contribute to it.
right. Okay. Yeah, it could take
Yeah.
notes at the
It
meeting.
could take
Right.
Yeah, and I think this is funny too, like, so it cites all these, let's see, talking about okay, so there's an explosion of blog posts in late 2025 pointing out that writing code wasn't the bottleneck, and then they cited all of these, "Writing code was never the bottleneck. Writing code was never the bottleneck. Why are we still or are we still pretending coding was the bottleneck?" On and on and on, easy bar harder. Haven't sped up, but coding was never done. It just again and again and again, LinkedIn posts. I think people there's a lot of this. It's just true. If you talk to any developer that is actually developing, they're gonna tell you that writing code's not the bottleneck and never was.
So
Just that's just the truth of it.
let's try out this analogy. And I'm going to be going over my skis a bit here because I have no
Okay.
idea what their dentists do. But let's say we're looking at dentists. The
Mhm.
tools that the dentists have been using have certainly changed over the decades. Okay,
Mhm.
they started off with horribly rudimentary tools that probably made them
Mhm.
take forever and do a very poor job. Like the end result wasn't actually that good. But as we have spent more time developing more tools for those dentists, you now have like laser stuff that's involved in dentistry. There's some really cool tools available to dentists. We still have dentists. we we still have the
Yeah.
people that have to operate the tools to be able to do it. And I don't see
Mhm.
AI as being any different than that. It is a
Yeah.
tool that is going to make us more productive. It may help us to get to a better quality end result as long as the tool is used well. But we still need humans to be able to operate the tool. As at the very beginning of the episode, one of my concerns is how do we train humans in this world where AI can do so much for them, where there's this tool that is super capable? How do
Yeah.
we train them so that they have the same level of knowledge that the tool has on how to build code? I do think that that's an issue, that's a concern that I've got about how do we make that happen. But that's why I'm curious with your experience. You when
Mhm.
you had to get the new job, you
Mhm.
switched companies, you switched to a different language, you switched to
Mhm.
different run times, you switched to a different
Mhm.
emphasis because you were UX before and now it's back end APIs.
Mhm.
That's a massive change. You had
Mhm.
zero experience with almost all of it.
And I'd only been a developer for just under a year.
Yeah. So how is it like it feels like you have taken it upon yourself to make sure you gain the knowledge and not just not relying on like AI to go build it for you. But how do we make sure that developers take that on? Like, has your
Yeah.
company made sure have they kind of as they brought you in, as they onboarded you, did they kinda lay that out of like, "No, I need you to actually learn this apart from AI," or how did that happen?
I mean, yeah, some of that was said, but I would say most of it's come from me, and I think that's the biggest reason they hired me.
Sure,
I
sure.
think that companies, especially now, are hiring for discipline above all. Even above capability, because I think, like, capability, like, I when I a year ago, when I was first learning development, I was obviously incapable, and people took chances on me, and I was able to ramp up really fast and be contributing as much, if not more, than every other developer on the team, because with discipline, that allows me that's my superpower, is being disciplined, being willing to not cut corners and, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn about how to do this myself and have AI teach me and coach me, not just do it for me. I'm not going to just shove the burden. I'm not just going to take the ticket, pass it to AI, have it do it, throw it to code review, and then whatever comments they make, put that back in AI. That way, I'm just literally just there's no point of me at that point. And I realize that, and I realize that that's not a contributing thing, and there's no reason to pay somebody like that. And so I think that companies, that's why the reason that they took a chance on me then, that's why even though I was going into a new language and entirely new experience, the company hiring me now hired me because it's not a thing of, do you know Elixir? Do you know, it's not a knowledge thing. It's not a capability thing necessarily. It's a discipline thing. I think that's the biggest thing people are hiring for and should hire for right now.
And yes, it makes it so that as you are contributing now, especially since you've learned a lot about the domain, you gained some tribal knowledge, it makes you more productive. You can get more done as a single person contributing to the team because of AI as a tool that makes you more productive. But it's not a replacement for learning those things. And that seems what's so critical to me as companies are considering their staffing, as engineers are considering
Hmm.
how they should be doing things. It makes me really sad. I have been hearing a lot of kids entering college right now who
Hmm.
are saying, like, I am super interested in trying to learn how to be a developer, but AI is going to take that job away. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to even start it. I'm going to go find something else
Yeah.
to do. And I'm like, no, that, and that's part of the reason I've been asking the questions I have through this episode, because I'm worried, like, how are we going to make sure that there are good, capable humans that will
Hmm.
go to college to learn some fundamental
Hmm.
skills, and that will come in and attack this like, no, I need to understand this myself.
Yeah.
And then because then they're going to be meaningful contributors. If it's eh, there's a reason your boss isn't just like, well, I'm just going to do exactly what you talked about. I'm going to train
Hmm.
AI to watch the
Hmm.
the bug system, and it'll pull in the tickets. It can go do the coding. It can review even with like a separate model so that you get kind of cross model review capabilities, and then commit it. And maybe he would do a final review. You could build that loop. That could
Hmm.
happen. And it's actually like there's huge momentum towards that right now.
Hmm.
I think it would be extremely cost prohibitive. I think even compared to paying a human, that could end up being like very expensive to run those kinds of loops.
'Cause you're gonna be throwing away so much of that too.
And yeah, redoing,
Yeah.
retraining, like the
And it's not just financial cost, it's your time cost.
absolutely.
Sometimes it's faster to jump into an issue, code it yourself, than to jump into an issue and try to figure out somebody else's code.
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
And same with AI, like, after the AI produces it, if you need to go change something, that it could be weeks later, so the context window's gone, like, that whatever the agent did, unless there was a plan written to the repo and, there was stuff written down about how that got built, all you have left is the code, and then the next time you go to point the agent at it, it's, like, totally clean and fresh, and it doesn't know what the last agent did with it, so it's
Sometimes I catch myself. I especially catch it when I, like, ask it to do something trivial, and I'll usually cancel the request, like, immediately, but sometimes I'll ask it something trivial, and then I see, like, the thinking pop up, and I'm like, "You should not have to think about this. This is so dumb. I shouldn't have even asked you to do this."
right, right.
Yeah.
And so there right there, there's some a little bit of value of human in the loop, right? Like, that was a massive I have to be extremely token conscious in my personal work because I'm paying, like, the minimum subscription levels,
Yeah.
And I find it phenomenal that there's people building autonomous agents that run on loops and just spin tokens all day. Like, how do you afford that? That is insanely expensive to have that be there. And you end up offloading stuff that should be super trivial and is super trivial for a human to go do. And instead, you're going to burn a huge number of tokens to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that it's kind of a little bit off
That
tangent,
kinda
but
reminded me of this earlier that I saw. I didn't point it out, but I thought this was kind of funny, and I've seen this. As Aaron Levy pointed out, CEOs are uniquely prone to delusions about AI's usefulness because they can build quick prototypes, but can't see 90% of the work it takes to turn into a finished product.
right, right.
Yeah,
I
that
kinda
is very
cringe at
true.
the new term of "ship it" has now turned into, like, the fact that you committed and pushed it to the repo. Like, that's shipping the code. Like, that is not shipping the code. That is putting it into a repo. Shipping it is a whole different level with pipelines, putting it out to a runtime,
Yeah.
and, like, there's so
Monitoring as
much
it
more
goes out.
involved, and, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Verifying, validating it's working properly and
But I see
stuff.
that in even in on X all the time, like, "I shipped, X number of things this week." I'm like, "No, you did 400 commits this week. That's what
Yeah.
you're saying, and that is not the same thing."
Plus, yeah, I mean, those can be gamed so easily too. I mean, I could ship 100 PRs a day if they were all one line.
Right.
It's
And
super
did
easily
nothing,
gamed.
like, didn't actually
Yeah.
impact anything. I shipped a one that changed the color on on the widget, like,
Yeah.
so?
Yeah. That's a whole other interesting discussion is like, because it is kinda hard to measure at the end of the day, like, your productivity, your actual productivity and velocity is kind of hard.
I've seen that too. I've seen some feedback of
It's not kind of hard, it's very hard. Like, what do
the
you even measure really?
the hall of meaningless metrics, and it's like
Yeah.
lines of code was once one. Oh, well, I can definitely, if that's my incentive, I can add a bunch of lines of code.
Yeah.
I can add a lot of and there was like the number of I don't know, I can't
But
remember
that
what all of
goes
them
back
were.
to what I said about discipline. That's why I think especially now more than ever, like AI, you're seeing this a lot in school, especially of like it's just fully gamified now. School is the ultimate AI paradise. Like essentially every single school task, because it is already well specced out task, like by sort of design, a school task has to be well specced out so it could be graded on a standardized sort of
Sure, sure.
curve. And so, therefore, since it's so standard,
Feeding
then
it to
and
AI
already
is
and
like
pre-known, feeding to
simple.
AI can always so AI can do basically everything that in school. And so then what it comes down to is like, all right, well, I'm looking for students who are not just college students. They didn't just go attend college. They are students of like life. They are learners, like I consider myself a learner. I love the act of learning itself. That's why actually school always made me mad, is because I felt like I was just doing tasks. I felt like I was just an AI in their loop of just like do this task, do this task, do this task. And it wasn't actually learning. And after I graduated college, I felt like graduating college gave me license to start learning. Like I finally started getting hired for jobs. And then I was like, okay, now I can finally learn. Thank you. Like,
Totally. I've
yeah.
I've always felt college was for teaching people how to learn. Like that was what it should be.
Yeah, or just teaching discipline again of
I'm
like, all
not
right, you
sure
can do it, but
I'm
are you willing to learn? Like, do you want to learn? Oh, this is kind of funny. Some commentators argue the future of humans staying in control is unlikely because it's too costly to pay people to do so. But there have already been a few viral stories of poorly supervised coding agents deleting production databases or causing other types of damage. That's way more costly than just paying a human, even if it costs
so
more for a
much.
human.
Yeah, yeah.
That kills your company. You're dead. Man bites dog rather than an emerging norm, but it is becoming more frequent and stuff, I think. Don't worry about it. Oh, this is what I was talking about before. Yeah, here's the graph right there. So you see the pandemic bubble right there of hiring.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of this is what. But look at this. It's actually
Kinda recovering.
it's actually going popping back up even with AI, I guess this only goes to 2025, but it's starting to come up even. And then but job titles calling them programmers is tanking. That's interesting. It's just a title difference, but I think it is just a shift of, like, a mentality difference, and I think this is an important shift. Like, I don't call myself a programmer. I think it's kinda funny. I think it's, like, a term that's kind of old now. I in my mind, it's, like, an old term. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm
Yep.
like, "Why would you hire a programmer?" Like, AI is a better programmer. Like,
So
I don't
you're
need a programmer, I need a developer.
and you're talking to s I've done this for 30 years. At the
Yeah,
very, very beginning of my career, they did call me a computer programmer.
yeah,
It wasn't very long, like, I'll bet for at least 20 years I've been called a
mhm.
developer and not a programmer.
You can see that too. I mean, this has just steadily declined,
Yeah.
and this is just skyrocketed because this is really the dot-com bubble where they were, like, programmers. And then you get tooling because that's the other thing is, like, AI is this magical thing, but a lot of that excitement is in the non-technical realm. A lot of the technical people are like, "Yeah, this is helpful. This is really cool. Don't get me wrong." But also we've had tooling that can do a lot of this stuff for a long time. We have
Yeah.
linting rules and stuff that we can
Right.
do automatically to fix our code, and we have highlighting rules. We have a lot of stuff that makes coding a lot easier than just, like, finding the semicolon and doing what, like, programming originally was,
Right.
is, like, literally programming, like or they used to call them even before that computers. Computers weren't actually what we call computers now. Computers was a job title. Like, you were a computer, and it was people that did math, right? That was a computer. Like, so yeah, I mean, they shift around job titles and stuff, and because we build tools that solve our jobs, and then we create new jobs. Right now, we need developers. Programmers are dead, you know.
Yep.
But people are saying developers are dead, but they're not dead. Maybe someday. I mean, this article, and I think my argument is no, but even if it did someday, there would be another job title. There would be another need.
I
So
I actually get
maybe
excited
that's my
about the
point.
fact that AI could help get rid of some of the stuff I don't like about being a developer. That is what
Mm.
entices me, like, if I can figure out how to create the right environment, the right instructions for an AI agent to do the stuff I don't wanna do, that is awesome.
This I like this too right here. Let's see. Just like vibe coding is not agentic engineering. So the difference between that, a lot of people are conflating the two
Right.
of just like if you're using AI, then you're vibe coding. I recently had a friend who told me this because he doesn't use AI very much. He's like kind of an AI skeptic
Uh-huh.
and he's a developer. It's kind of funny because he actually became a developer right out of high school. He dropped out of college and just did a web course, a web development course, became a developer before AI. And it's funny because we graduated in the same high school class. He did that, and then I went to college, and then I came out after AI, and I started development. So now we're both developers. He has like 3 years, 4 years experience. I have 1 year or so I guess he has like 4 or 5 years experience. I have 1 year experience, and he's an AI skeptic, and he's used to doing things like pre-AI kind of thing, and I'm like born into it, and I'm like, like it seems like you're doing a bunch of stuff. You're wasting a lot of time, bro. Like, and what he told me, because I told him at one point, I was like, I don't know if I've ever manually written a line of code, like not a full line of code, which is a bit of a hyperbole, but like, I'm sure I have, but my point is, like, yeah, sure, I'll go in and manually edit, like, small things, but even small tasks I have agents do because I've noticed that occasionally, even when I think it's a small task, sometimes the agent catches something or thinks of something that I thought it was a small task, but actually has larger ramifications. So I've gotten in the habit of asking it anyways, even if it's a small change, because saves me sometimes, saves it kinda catches me. And what he responded to me was, he's like, "So you're just vibe coding?" And I was like, "Whoa, no, no, I'm not vibe coding. I am not vibe coding." And so I think this is a good distinction here is I am an agentic engineer. This is agentic engineering.
Right.
I am a software engineer, right?
Right.
And I actually hadn't heard this term until this. It makes a lot of sense. Maybe I had, but um, agentic engineering, that's really what it is, right?
Yep.
Is pairing with AI. I do all of the critical thinking. I'm watching every single line of code. I don't ship one line of code that I don't read, right? I never ever do that. I read every single line that goes out the door, make sure I know it. I know what's happening between everything. I'm making sure that a lot of times I'm asking, even if I don't recognize a pattern, I'm asking it, are you following a pattern that you found elsewhere in the repo for this? Or like, I'm learning from it constantly. So I think I'm actually through that learning and doing more than programmer would do through agentic engineering. I think that's a useful distinction. Inflation. I think that's the sort of the point of the article. Anyways, a few things there.
They keep talking about the sandwich. So what is that? Decide,
Yeah,
execute,
it's
deliver.
just I think that this is again something that any developer could tell you is like this goes right along with coding was never the bottleneck. of like people thought that maybe the whole thing, the whole coding task was just the execution task in the middle. But their thing is that there's this big thing of deciding what to build and how to build it and stuff. And then there's the execution, and then there's the delivery. And on top of this, they also talk about understanding being a prerequisite for all three. And so the deep human understanding of the code base, the business, and the environment. That's a lot of what I've had to catch up on. It's not
Sure.
been Elixir. I learned Elixir pretty quickly. What I've been and I guess I'm still learning a few like
Sure.
things here and there. But the longest thing that's taken me to understand is what does our app actually do? What do our customers want? What is this new feature supposed to do? I'm this deep understanding, human understanding of the code base, the business, and in the environment, which is hard to verbalize. It takes a lot of just kind of intuition and feeling and learning. It's hard to verbalize that to an agent. And their point here is that the decide and deliver, it makes it look bigger here. I don't think they get bigger necessarily. I actually think they get smaller too. But the point is that it's not all the execution layer.
So, and I think what you just said is important. It's hard to verbalize. You've spent time now with the company, working shoulder to shoulder with the others that are in the company, and you've come to understand the challenges that the company faces, where they
Hmm.
need to take the product to be successful.
Yeah.
Articulating that and having that be well understood by an AI agent is really hard. You could try to articulate it. You could try to write some stuff into scaffolding in the repo that helps it to sort of understand, but
Right.
really it's probably not something it even needs to understand because that's not what it's doing. It is not trying to run the
Well,
business.
and I think another thing is I would argue that it's always going to have a lag time behind reality because any time that you learn something new or you make a new decision about the company or you have a conversation or something and your own attitude of the company, it's a leadership thing, right? Of like, okay, and decision thing. And so anytime you make a decision, your I guess your understanding, this deep understanding of the business, every person in the business is going to be evolving that in real time, second by second. And so anytime you're essentially doing backfills if you ever are right at telling AI you're updating prompts to tell it, give it business understanding, you're essentially just backfilling places in time, but it can never have real time understanding like the humans in the company do.
Sure. And it seems like there's a critical factor there. As the agent is executing, inevitably it's going to come to a point where it's making a decision that it hasn't been given any direction on. There's something it's got to go figure out, and
Mhm.
it's going to infer it because that's all that it has left to do. And that's kind of the amazing piece is it
Mhm.
can infer, and that can go horribly or it can go really well. But course correction, I've seen this just in my own experience with it. I can do a really good job of defining exactly how I want stuff done. But then as it goes to execute, and it may go great for a little bit. I may be like, every single thing I have to do is like, you're nailing it. This is perfect. I'm really happy with my scaffolding, really happy with my skills. I'm really happy with the tools I've provided because it is writing code pretty much like I would if I was going to go manually write it. And that's kind of the goal. But then
Mhm.
it all of a sudden it'll do something that like way off, like not expected. And I need to be able to provide course correction. And then what I think of is like, well, why did it end up here? What decision did I leave it to infer why it went
Mhm.
off like this? Because that's and inevitably like, okay, I think I need to change, a skill or whatever it is to try to provide that course correction because I don't want that agent to ever end up there again. That is not
Yeah.
where I want it to be. And I just think that's always going to be there, regardless of how many times you do that, how many times you do course correction. I could see the argument of being like, well, but after so long of doing that, you're going to end up at a spot where the agents don't have to infer decisions. They've got all of it in front of them. I
Mhm.
just don't think that's ever going to be a reality. I think
Yeah, it's like theoretically possible, but I think realistically, practically not.
the course correction need will always be there, and you need a human to do it.
I think this was also interesting. It said evidence for the sandwich model of AI's productivity effects comes from this recent paper. Across 100,000 developers on GitHub, the researchers found that AI agents led to an eightfold increase in the number of lines of code written, consistent that AI almost completely compresses the execute layer of the sandwich. But this led only to 30% more releases.
So, to me, there's a little bit of an economic equation here. The model vendors are
Mhm.
incented because of the way they price things. They're incented to make token burn happen. And so there's incentive to have it go after the more complicated solutions as a way of burning more tokens
Yeah.
with the final result. Which is why, so here's an example that I can point to. In my own personal strategy is readme.md is for humans and agents.md is for agents. And so on purpose, like humans tend to need a little bit more prose, a little bit more words, a little bit more
Mhm.
information to be able to
Mhm.
get the point and understand everything that's going on. And agents don't need that. In fact, it can be a problem. The more wordy things are, the more likely they are to not take away what they should from the instructions. So very concise, very clear instructions where humans might need a differently. That's also
Yeah.
differently. And so I want my agents to ignore readme.md. Like, don't even read it in, like, ever. I don't. That's not for you. That's for humans. And no matter how I put it into my scaffolding, no matter where I put it, it is always reading readme.md into the context. Every single time I run an agent, it's reading readme.md. And I have explicitly put into agents, into the model specific files, everywhere I can, I have don't read readme.md into context. And it does every time. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think the only way I have you heard about, like, how you can do it's kind of like a get ignore, but for your agents?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's just an agent ignore or
There's
something.
a way that's very
Trying to
model
remember.
specific of how it works.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could put in a hook.
Like in Cursor, there's a specific way to exclude
There
files.
is, yeah, and so hooks, right? It's very specific to the models you use, and I should go do that probably because I don't want it to waste my valuable
Well, not even
tokens.
through hooks. You can do it you can set it up where it's just like, it can't read it.
Well, the only way I know to do that is hooks. That it actually
No,
just
there's a way,
can't
yeah.
do it. Okay, so
Yeah, I can
maybe
show
Cursor
you.
has something, but the point is
Yeah.
like no matter my directions, it's still
Yeah,
doing
the
it.
point still stands, and that's true. Like, there are things that you may like, one example not in my last company, one of the things that we did exclude from our models from ever reading was our migrations. I think the reason was just like, yeah, we don't want it to, like, bloat its context with,
Sure.
loading
Right.
in
Right.
all of
Right.
our, like, database migrations
Right.
or, like, want to try to, like, change them or
Right.
anything. But there were times where I was, like, debugging something, and I was like, I needed it to get the context from a certain migration or something, and I couldn't provide it. So I think there are certainly cases of things that you do need sometimes to have agents and sometimes not, and it's kind of difficult.
I get
But
this though of they do tend to overcomplicate solutions, and I think it's on purpose. I think the model vendors are like, we need to burn tokens. So
yeah, I think it's a little conspiratorial, but I think it's true to some degree. I think that's more I think it's less of an intentional decision and more of like a negligence decision. I think that any sort of fat that they could trim and make more efficient, they probably choose not to.
sure.
I don't think it's that they're intentionally going in and trying to come up with new ways to burn more tokens. I think it's more like there are probably a lot of inefficiencies that they could solve, but they have no incentive to do so.
Right. Right.
I think it's more of that.
I'm following.
They'd rather just add more thinking loops.
Right.
Yeah, like instead of which actually quick side note, as I'm always just like bragging about Cursor, not sponsored, but I'm a big fan, just use it all the time. But one thing that they have done in their own models is like really focus on that. That's what the whole Cursor that's what so Cursor 2.5 or Composer 2.5 is the most recent one. And my understanding is that it is literally just built. In fact, I think even Composer 2 was built on Composer 1. I could be wrong about that. Anyways, what they did to get Composer 2.5 for sure, from 2 to 2.5 was I think they didn't retrain it from scratch at all. It's not like a new model. It's just they did the retraining on it. I actually think it's what all the the minor versions of all the models
Yep.
are just retrainings. But anyways, in any case, their specific retraining was different than any other AI lab. What they were doing is they would look at its decision making along the way and they would try to find the root decision that went wrong and fix that. They would add specific retraining at that point in the step until it got it right. And then they would evaluate from there. And that's what I think a lot of the Cursor bench that they have goes off of and stuff is that decision making, which I think is hugely, I think that is an example of a place that is, even though they're maybe not even incentivized to do so, I think that they're just a really good engineering org and they really want this stuff to work really well. And I think that their bet is that they're going to ultimately end up with the best, most efficient AI. And at the end of the day, even though they're not profitable and they're kind of, they're the not making headlines like OpenAI and Anthropic. Their bet is that they're going to be they're going to end up with the best AI because of that decision making.
We'll see. Now that Elon's bought
Oh,
him, we'll see where it goes from here. Yeah, it never was the code writing that's been the bottleneck. It's everything else, and it still has to be
right
there. All
here,
that other
right
stuff still
here.
has to be here,
Yeah. I think to summarize the whole episode is right there. Writing code isn't and never was a bottleneck.
and we still need
And that's
humans,
why
and we always
that's
will.
why exactly. That's why AI hasn't replaced software engineers and never will.
Right. They need to know how to use the tool. I'm very
Yeah.
convinced of that. And that's why I'm worried about how do you've obviously taken the initiative, but that's my primary concern out of this whole discussion is how do we convince engineers they need to invest the time to still understand everything that the agent's doing,
Not
even
take
though the agent's
shortcuts.
going to go do it. Yeah, that is rough. And my argument is you're going to have a hard time overseeing the agent when you have no idea what the agent's doing and you don't understand what it's actually doing. So that's the key. Understand what the AI
Cool.
agent is doing, and then you're in good shape.
This has been Real World AI signing off. I'm Jason.
I'm Jeff. We'll see you in the next episode.